And staying in Syria, where in the days following the downfall of the Assad dictatorship, people went to the country's prisons to look for relatives locked away under the regime. Our next report follows a man who can now revisit the place where he was incarcerated and tortured for weeks.
This unassuming building in Damascus, a notorious prison where people disappeared and were tortured. Now relatives are searching for their loved ones, going through documents scattered inside and outside the building. This is Fadi Ardouri, who spent weeks here. He says he was arrested because of suspicious banking activity.
They arrested me and wanted to charge me with robbery. They asked, "What do you do?" I said I'm a truck driver. I was with my father at the hospital, and I received money from my parents and my brother in Turkey. They thought that I was an agent because I have money transfers in my account.
Fadi was moved from prison to prison. Conditions were grim, abuse rampant, prisoners chained together.
They tortured me to say something different, to charge me and take more money. But I stuck to my word and the truth. Here they treated me badly.
He and his fellow prisoners created a calendar to keep track of time, since they couldn't see the sun. Eventually, he was able to bribe guards to release him, and he says he was one of the lucky ones.
People without money spent 5 to 9 years in Adra prison, and they still have to pay a fine at the end.
Now the guards are gone, but it will take a long time to piece together what happened to other prisoners, the unlucky ones who are still missing.
We can speak now to Yvonne McDermott Rees, a professor of international law at Swansea University in the UK. Welcome to DW. There are so many stories of family, loved ones searching for people who've gone missing in Syria. Records exist in some cases, but of course not in all. Do you think it's likely that justice will ever be served in Syria?
Well, I think this is a really crucial moment for justice in Syria. We're seeing now a move towards documenting and ensuring that there's accountability for some of the worst atrocities that have been committed over the last few years. And what's really remarkable at this moment is that for all the documentation efforts that have taken place over the last 10, 15 years, meticulously trying to keep records of what we know, from these detention facilities, an onslaught of information that can help document actually what's happened. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we'll see justice for some of these activities.
Yvonne, we've got a bit of a shaky line, so apologies to our viewers, but we're going to keep going and hopefully we can hear you. What would you hope might happen next in Syria? So you've spoken about the importance of this moment, but given the gravity of the human rights abuses committed by the Assad regime, in particular in the prison system, what would you hope would now be the next steps?
I think the next steps, justice is going to be a multifaceted endeavour. So we're not just looking at domestic prosecutions, but I think that will be one avenue. So within Syria itself, and also universal jurisdiction prosecutions. We've already had some of those in Germany and Sweden and in other countries around the world. And then we might also think about international prosecution. So there's a possibility that the new regime will accept the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. So we might see prosecutions happening in The Hague as well as in domestic courts.
Mm-hmm. Are you able to tell us more about the abuses that you're seeing emerge from Syria under Assad? I mean, is there anything that sort of stood out to you in particular?
Yes, well, I think it's already been very well documented that torture, inhumane, degrading treatment has been committed in these detention facilities. And actually, just a couple of days before the Assad regime fell, the international and independent investigative mechanism for Syria, that's a UN body, had brought out this big report where they showed how detention was used as a way to repress political challenges to the regime. So the systematic nature of those abuses, I think, are likely to constitute crimes against humanity, and we would hope that we'll see those reflected in prosecutions. But then there are also other targeting of civilians, the use of chemical weapons, a whole suite of alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity that have been committed. And so we hope that the intensely time-consuming and intensely rigorous investigative activities that have been happening in the last few years, we'll see that information being reflected now in prosecutions, both domestically and internationally, and another accountability fora.
Yvonne, what precedents exist for the situation that's unfolding in Syria right now? I mean, are there any lessons to be learned from the past?
Well, by this stage, we have quite a lot of precedents in terms of prosecuting international crimes. Since 1998, the International Criminal Court was established, and we've had, of course, other sort of domestic and hybrid avenues for prosecution. What's unprecedented, I think, about the Syria situation is just the volume of information. So this has often been said to be the most well-documented armed conflict in human history, because, we have people picking up their mobile phones and, recording information that can now be used in these prosecutions going forward. And then we have all of this paper documentation. We've got photographs like the Caesar files, which were smuggled out of Syria by a defector from the regime. So I think a challenge is going to be channeling all that information into prosecutions, and that's going to involve, I think, a lot of cooperation between different prosecuting organisations, so domestic prosecutors, but also UN bodies and so forth. So that's going to be an interesting development to keep an eye on. But I'm confident that working together, these bodies can do their work.
Yvonne McDermott Rees from Swansea University. Yvonne, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.